Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well and having a great time staying safe. This is class 5 science lesson, unit 6 section 2. So in this lesson we will try to talk about force that act together. More specifically, we will try to talk about balanced force and unbalanced force. And so let's start. Let's start with the section review, page 255. So the first question says, what starts an object moving or stop it if it is already moving? Your answer should be force, because force is a push or pull that can make an object move, stop, or change direction or speed of an object. The second one says, name 3 forces that affect you every day. The 3 forces are friction, magnetism, and gravitation. What force keeps the moon orbit around the earth? So the moon is kept in orbit around the earth by gravity. The fourth one is a critical thinking. Suppose you push a cart toward the east. In which direction does the force of friction push on the cart? Since the force of friction is oppose or act against the motion of the car, and the car is moving to east, so the friction is probably moving to west. The last question says, the force of gravitation between 2 objects is less when A, the total of their masses is greater, B, friction between them is greater, C, the density of one of them is greater, D, the distance between them is greater. Your answer should be A, the total of their masses is greater, because gravity actually depends on mass. Okay, in the previous lesson we talked about how every object that exists on the surface of Earth is affected by many different kind of forces. For example, the car in front of you. Imagine that car is moving along the road. Many different kind of forces are acting together on the car. For example, a force exerted by the ground is holding up the car. The engine of the car is turning the wheel and making the car move forward or go forward. And the force of friction with the road and with the air around the car holding the car back. Sometimes the force act on an object balance each other. So this type of force is called balanced force. So what is a balanced force? Basically, a balanced force is a force that is equal in size, opposite in direction. Equal in size, opposite in direction. You will have to remember this. This is very important. Balanced forces are equal in size, opposite in direction. As a result, they cancel each other out. So since they are the same in size, but their direction are opposite, they cancel each other out. When a balanced force act on an object, they do not change the object's motion or direction. So if the object is moving, it will keep moving in the same speed, also in the same direction. What about if the object is not moving? In this case, if the object is stopped, it will remain stopped. It will not start moving because it is affected by a balanced force. Let me ask you another question. Why a balanced force does not change the object's movement or direction? Because balanced forces are equal in size and opposite in direction. It seems as no force is acting on an object. Now, if I asked you to go and push a wall, a steady wall, what will happen? Nothing will happen. the wall does not move because it is exerting an opposite force that exactly balances the force you exert while pushing against it. So even though the wall does not move, you are still exerting force. Now, what will happen if I changed you to a bulldozer? Now, a bulldozer pushing against the wall might exert a force large enough to overcome the force exerted by the wall. In this case, the force is unbalanced. So once again, what is balanced forces? Balanced forces are equal in size and opposite in direction. Balanced forces do not change in motion. They are equal in size and opposite in direction. Now look at the picture. Those kids are playing, right? اگر سریوم ناڵانە بکەوم ناڵانە ئێستا یاریەکەن پێکەوە بەڵام لەبەرەوەی سایزی فۆرسەکەی کە کردویانە سەر حەبلەکە بەقەر یەکتریە نە جەماعەتی سوورەکە ئەیباتەوە و نەشینەکە ئەیباتەوە بۆ لەبەرەوەی فۆرسەکەی کە ئەگزێرتیان کردوتە سەر یەکتری بالانسی کردووە وایە هەردوو لا هێزی بەکارێنێ بەڵام ئەو هێزی بەکارێنێنەوە یەکسانە لە سایزە و دایرەکشنەکەی سێری سەمە سوورەکان بکە بەعکسی یەکتریەوەیە. Now moving on to the unbalanced force. Unbalanced force occurs when a force is greater than the opposite force. So whenever one side of the force is greater than the other side, we call that unbalanced force. When a bulldozer pushed against the wall, unbalanced force is making the wall fall down. Unbalanced force stop a moving object. When you catch a ball, you stop it by exerting a force greater than the force exerted by the ball. That's why the ball stops. Unbalanced force can also speed up or slow down moving object. Remember, unbalanced force can speed up or slow down a moving object. Now imagine yourself riding a bicycle up a hill. What happens in this case? You will be slowed down by the force of gravity. Even though you were trying very hard with the pedals, the bicycle will not be moving as fast as you want. Now, if you got into the top of the hill and you wanted to come down, what will happen? The unbalanced force of gravity may cause the bicycle to speed up. When unbalanced force acts on an object, the object starts to move, speed up or slow down, stop or change direction. So the result of unbalanced force is on an object, of course, is usually the object starts moving, speed up or slow down, stop or change direction. So whenever an unbalanced force acts on an object, one of these cases happen. The object might stop or start moving, speed up or slow down or change direction. Let's talk about forces that act in pairs. The change in motion of an object is always caused by force or forces. One place to see forces in action is in games such as marble. Suppose that you're playing with marbles and the blue marble is moving, the red marble is not moving. Now let me ask you a question. How can we make the red marble move since it's not moving? Well, whenever the blue marble is hitting the red one, the red marble starts to move. How can this happen? Well, what happens is actually the force to move the red marble is exerted by the blue marble. But what happens to the blue marble after it hits the red one? So we know that whenever the blue marble hits the red one starts to move. But what happens to the blue marble? Well, it slows down or stops. A force must act on a blue marble as well. So basically we can say that the force that acts on the blue marble is actually from the red one. Or we can say that it is actually from the red marble that the blue marble hit. So I want to say that one of the basic law of science is the following. Force always act in pairs. When one object act on the second object, the second object also act on the first object. You saw the case of the blue marble and the red marble. They act on each other. When you walk, your feet push against the floor. The floor also pushes against your feet. Moving on to the net force. What is a net force? A net force is the sum of all forces acting on an object. So remember, when two forces act on an object at the same time, the force may be balanced or unbalanced. We talked about this. Adding or subtracting the individual force give a value. This value is called net force. And net force is measured by Newton. And another thing is that a net force is capable of accelerating a mass. So once again, what is a net force? A net force is the sum of all forces acting on an object. So what will happen if the two forces are equal in size but opposite in direction, just like in the case of the elephant? Look at each one of those elephants are exerting 200 Newton of force in the opposite direction, and the net force is exactly equal to 0. What will happen? The branch will not be taken by any of those elephants in the picture. Why? Because if two equal forces acting on an object in an opposite direction, the net force will be balanced and the motion of the object will not change. So as you can see, the same force to the right, the same amount of the force to the left, and the net force is 0 and the object is not moving, as you can see. What will happen if we had two forces acting on an object in the same direction? What should we do? How should we find the net force? You will have to add the forces to get the net force. For example, suppose that two people who are moving an object from the same side or to the same direction, as you can see in the picture, each pushes with a force of 5 Newton and 10 Newton to the right. The net force on the object is equal 15 Newton to the right. Now let's change the 5 to 120 and the 10 to 120. What will be our net force? Exactly, it will be 240 Newton to the right again. So if two forces acting on an object in the same direction, you add the forces to get the net force. So your homework will be the following. You have an object and two forces acting on that object. The first force is 15 Newton to the right. The second force is 75 Newton to the right. So what is the direction of the net force and what is the net force. Now, what will happen if two forces acting on an object in opposite direction? Well, in this case, you subtract the smaller force from the larger force to get the net force. So the second question is the following. How can we define the direction of the net force? The net force acts in the direction of the large force. Now look at the picture in front of you. You'll see two forces acting on an object. The first force is 5 Newton to the left, and the second force is 10 Newton to the right, and the net force is 5 Newton to the right, exactly. So we subtract the two forces, and the direction is the direction of the larger force. The second question, which is actually your homework. The first, we have 10 Newton to the left and 12 Newton to the right. What is the net force? So if two forces act on an object in opposite direction, you subtract the smaller force from the large force to get the net force. The net force acts in the direction of the large force. Remember this. Now let's change the 10 Newton to 240 Newton and the 12 Newton to 100 Newton. What will be our net force, and also what is the direction of the net force? So that is your second homework. At the end, don't forget your homework, which is the review on page 261, and thank you for your attention. Good luck.